The midnight knock. The old house stood at the edge of town, abandoned for as long as anyone could remember. The wind howled through the cracks in the windows, carrying whispers of the past. It was a place of sorrow, where the forgotten ones were left to die in solitude. No one dared to approach it after dark, except for me. I had come for her. It was a cold, moonless night when she first stepped inside. The clock on the wall ticked slowly, its hands moving with the rhythm of time itself. She was a curious soul, eager to uncover the secrets buried within the rotting walls. She didn't know I was already there, watching, waiting. The air grew heavy as she wandered through the house, the floor creaking beneath her every step. I knew she could feel my presence. Everyone does, eventually. She paused in the hallway, her eyes widening as the old door creaked open. It wasn't the wind. No, that sound was too deliberate, too intentional. She took a tentative step forward, peering into the darkness. I could hear her heartbeat, quickening with each passing second. But the shadows were thick, and in that moment, I stepped out from the darkness, my presence filling the room. Her scream never escaped her lips. The silence of the house was deafening as I approached her, the weight of inevitability pressing down on her chest. She had come here looking for answers, but all she found was me. I claimed her as the clock struck midnight, the final chime marking the end of her journey. There was no escaping the call of death. Not in this house. Not ever. The last ride. The roads were empty, and the moon hung low in the sky, casting an eerie glow over the winding path. She was in a hurry, the tires of her car spinning against the asphalt as she sped toward nowhere. She was running from something, perhaps even from herself, but no matter how fast she drove, there was no escaping me. I had been following her for miles, my presence lingering like a shadow, waiting for the perfect moment. I could see the fear in her eyes as she glanced nervously in the rearview mirror. But no matter how many times she checked, I was never there. I was always just out of sight, always waiting. She pushed the pedal to the floor, trying to outrun her own terror. Her breath came in ragged gasps, but no matter how much she pushed the car, the road stretched on forever. The trees blurred past her, the dark shadows reaching out to grasp the wheels. Her car began to sputter, the engine losing power as the road seemed to stretch endlessly ahead. She pulled to the side, her hands shaking as she tried to restart the engine, but it was no use. The car was dead. She stepped out, hoping for help, but the night air was thick with the scent of death. The forest around her stood still, as if watching her every move. I had already claimed the road. There was no one else here, no one to save her. I watched her wander further into the woods, the silence broken only by the rustle of leaves beneath her feet. And then, as if the trees themselves had swallowed her whole, I appeared before her. She froze, her breath catching in her throat. "Are you lost?" I asked, my voice a hollow whisper. She tried to scream, but her voice failed her. She tried to run, but her legs gave out beneath her. I was already there waiting for her. And just like that, her race ended. The forgotten grave. The cemetery was silent, the stones weathered by years of neglect. Among the rows of graves, there was one that stood apart, a cracked, ancient stone barely visible under the thick layer of moss. It had been forgotten, lost to time, and the name was no longer readable. But I knew who lay beneath it. I had always known. The family had long since moved on. The caretakers had forgotten about the plot, and the townsfolk had stopped speaking of it. But the dead don't fade away so easily. They never forget. The air was thick with the scent of earth and decay as I walked through the cemetery. It was a cold evening, and the wind whispered through the trees. But something felt different tonight. There was a heaviness in the air, a pull that led me back to the forgotten grave. I knelt by the stone, brushing away the dirt to reveal the name that had once been there. It was gone now, but I could still see the outline in the stone. It didn't matter. The grave was still here, and so was I. The ground trembled beneath me as I reached into the earth, pulling out the remains of the one who had been buried here long ago. The soul was restless, always calling to me. It was time to return them to the fold. As I lifted the soul into my embrace, the wind picked up, howling through the graveyard as if it too had remembered. The forgotten were never truly lost. They just waited, and I never forget. The stories are told, but the shadows remain, watching, waiting. Perhaps tonight they'll whisper your name. Until next time, if you're still here.